Good evening, everybody. Welcome to IB Nation Sports Talk. I am not Sean Stiers. I don't look like Sean Stiers, but I'm filling in for Sean Stiers. But I am joined by the other Stiers, the better looking Stiers. That is Jesse. So, Jesse, tonight, man, I had to have you on because one of the films, so people that don't know this, I actually recruited Jesse in high school when he was in high school, when I was coaching football at Defiance College. And one of the things that I saw in him is I saw a game against, I think it was Mishawaka, where you had a mess of tackles against a triple option offense. And I was like, that dude can play. So Jesse knows a little something about the triple option from the opposite side. Obviously, I coached and played in the triple option, did not like it, but I did it. And, obviously it's a different type of deal. And so what we wanted to do tonight is we wanted to kind of do like a little crash course, triple option 101. And we'll talk specific, kind of big picture, what the triple option is, different types of things that you'll see, and then explain the difference between a triple option play and a triple option offense, because they are not the same thing. And so we'll dive into those type of things as well. But Jesse, great to have you, man. It's the second show in a week that you and I have done together. I'm excited about it and looking forward to more, man. Appreciate you being on with me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's my usual night on Thursdays, but obviously a different person. I think this might be our first show of just you and I together.
Just
obviously.
you and I.
Yeah, yep. I was on the post-game show not too long ago, and obviously you were there too. But this is our first one together, so really excited for that. And I'm hoping that everyone else is excited for that, because it's like a different combination, the way that you piece people together. It's a different package, different perspective. So it's all fun. Yeah, it's just different ways to think about it.
Absolutely. Make sure we don't get stale. And I think tonight's interesting, Jesse, because obviously we've got some former coaches on the show. I'm a former coach and a former player. Vince is a former coach. You're a former pretty good high school football player. So we have some experience. And I think that's going to be, look, tonight's a diehards night, right? I mean, that's kind of what tonight's about, is if you're a diehard football fan, this is the kind of show you want to listen to, because we're diving into the weeds a little bit tonight. So let's dive right into the triple option. And I think the first thing that we have to do when we're talking about the triple option is we have to define some terms, okay? And the first term that we are going to define is people have to understand that there is a difference between running the triple option and being a triple option offense. There's also a triple option that can be used sort of big picture, which can be, Jesse, as we were talking about, there's a lot of teams running some type of triple option plays. And then there's the actual thing that we kind of define as the triple option, which is what we see from Air Force, what we see from Army, and to a degree, we see from Navy. But it's kind of interesting. The triple option is considered this really strange thing that only 3 teams really run. But if you really study college football and you really understand the principles of the triple option, there are a lot of teams running something that can be traced back to the triple option principles in college football.
Yeah, like we were kind of talking about a little bit ago, there's so many, different schemes that are considered. Like I would consider the RPO a triple option if you wanted to, because there's 3 options in one play. There's often, quarterback speed option ran out of shotgun with your running back. So it's just, there's a lot of different ways that you can accomplish triple option. It's just essentially having 3 options, but there's a difference between actually running a triple option offense, like you were talking about just a little bit ago as well.
So when we're talking about triple option in this context of what we're discussing today, we're going to kind of focus on the traditional term of triple option, which is the play that you will see from teams like Navy, teams like Air Force, teams like Army. Tulane was running it for a while. They don't really run it anymore. Willie Fritz had run the triple option in the past. They don't really run that anymore. Obviously, they didn't run that with Chip Long last year. So that's kind of a thing of the past for them. But we're going to kind of stick to the traditional sort of like Veer midline type of triple option. And so essentially the definition of it is simple. It's an option. It's a play where you have 3 options, and it's a play that can be run. Now, the thing that people have to understand is nowadays, if a team is a triple option offense, it is a team that bases itself off of running different plays out of specific looks, oftentimes as an under center look with a dive back, with some sort of wing formation that you'll see teams do that allows them to sort of run different types of option concepts at you. A triple option offense is not just the triple option. And I'm like kind of going down here through some different plays that you'll see run out of a triple option. So, for example, you'll see midline option, which is a triple option. It can be a double option or it can be a dive, all off the same look. You have inside veer. You have outside veer. Same thing. You may have something may look like an outside veer, but it's really just a dive. Something may look like an outside veer, but it's really just, you're running speed option, but you're getting the dive look. You'll have dive plays at it, QB duck. You'll have trap plays. You'll have toss plays. You'll have just speed option, double option. You'll have reverses. You'll have an inside wham play kind of coming back like a counter off of it. There's all types of different things that you're going to see. So it's not like you're just all week just practice veer. And if you can figure out the veer, you got him stopped. A triple option offense, Jesse, could go through an entire game and run the triple option twice, the pure triple option twice. And that right there, Jesse, is what makes this offense hard to defend if a team is really good at it, like Navy used to be and like Air Force is right now.
Yeah, the most important aspect of the triple option, like the triple option that we're talking about is the fullback dive. Like if you have a very successful fullback dive, then that's going to predicate a lot of, the success that you're talking about, because then it just opens up your veer, it opens up your outside, and it sucks people in. Like you have to commit your inside linebackers. Everyone's just committed more to the end, and it's going to open up the veers, the whams, the counters, everything else that goes with it. But those are, like you said, I guess the main way I break it down is you have the fullback dive, and then as soon after the fullback dive, you have the QB kind of option where he can, sprint through the hole and follow his fullback, or he can kind of cut around the corner and look for a lane that way. And then there's the regular just option where he keeps it and is kind of pitching it out to the running back immediately. So that's kind of how I break it down. But again, the most important part to me is the fullback dive, because if you can stop the fullback dive, you're going to have good success. And then vice versa, if the fullback dive is hitting you pretty hard, you're going to have a long day.
If you're looking at it from an offensive standpoint, you nailed it, Jesse. From an offensive coaching standpoint, you talked about it from a defensive standpoint. You got to stop the fullback. Well, the same is true of the offense. If the triple option is whether it's midline or veer, especially veer, because veer is more of a like midline. A lot of times is really just fullback quarterback,
right?
Whereas the veer is more of a sort of almost an off tackle, and we'll kind of get into some of the specifics where it's a true triple. The midline can be a triple, but you really want it to be a fullback quarterback type of look.
Right.
But if your option, no matter what version of it you're running, if it's going the way that you want it to go, you may only pitch the ball a couple times. It's really the fullback's going to have a bunch of carries and the quarterback's going to be next, because that means that they're not taking away the fullback. You're having different looks off of it. The way that they're playing your fullback, your triple, is also allowing you to hit them with dives. It's allowing you to hit them with traps. If the fullback can go off, the triple is very hard to stop. And then if the quarterback's having success, it can be hard to stop. And that's the thing that we talked about in our breakdown today, Jesse. We did our 4 keys to victory against Navy. Didn't dive into the specifics of the option. Our first one was, be aggressive. I like controlled aggression against the option. We'll dive into. I'll ask you your opinion on that later. Key number 2 was be disciplined. That's a big key for a defense. And number 3 was force the ball outside. That's not where the offense ideally wants to go. They want to hammer you from tackle to tackle. And if the triple option is working the way that they want it to, that's where they're hurting you. And the fullback and the quarterback are going to get a lot of carries.
Yeah, the fullback and the veer off the tackler are the most popular because it provides the most safety as well. You don't want to give the option of getting blown up on the perimeter. You're pitching the ball backwards. It just creates a more likelihood of fumbles. So like you said, they want to stay between the tackles and kind of that, that V formation essentially of where they want to run the ball. So anytime you get to the perimeter, there's just the added variable of chaos. And that's triple option offense cannot afford to turn the ball over. It's all about possession, time of possession, controlling the clock, and then just nailing you every play for 3 yards. If they get 3 yards, that is a beyond a success for the triple option offense.
Now, I have said in the past that I think the expression that Woody Hayes is attributed as saying 3 yards in a cloud of dust is just stupid, that people use that. This is the one exception. Because to your point, if you get a triple option offense in 4th and 2, they're going for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way that it doesn't. You could be at your own 25. It doesn't matter. They're going to go for it because the philosophy is when the option is being run correctly, we're getting 2 yards every time. We're getting 3 yards every time. And that's what makes it kind of challenging. And the interesting thing is if you watch Air Force, they even more than Navy, but Navy will do it as well. Notre Dame fans hate the scan. I hate the scan. But triple option teams run that a lot because they're going to line up in their look. They're going to do a quick motion, go back, and they're going to see how you react to it and then make the call. How is your front lined up? Are you in an odd front? Are you in an over front? Are you in an under front? Because that's going to determine where are we going. So like if you're in an under front, for example, you may say, hey, look, we want to run the option to the 3 technique. Some teams are going to want to run the option to the nose because then they're going to double the nose and they're going to read the dive off the end and then read pitch off the next level defender. If you're running, especially if you're running the veer, if you're running midline, you may run it to the 3 technique. So you're going to double the backside shade and then do the dive off of the 3 technique, and then you're pitching off of the 5 technique or the 7-eye, or 9, depending on if you have it tied down on that edge. So and then you want to kind of see what the look is, where the linebackers looked up. So you're going to see a lot of that. And it also plays into the whole, they want to run the clock. They're not looking to snap the ball with 25 seconds left. They're going to run the clock. Some other principles about it is most teams will sort of a mix of zone blocking and gap blocking. Zone blocking is more of just a true veer. Now, Air Force actually runs a lot of, I don't know if you've watched a lot of Air Force, but they step down a lot and they kind of secure inside zone. Navy has always been more of a step outside zone type of team. So it's a little bit different how they do it. Same principle, same kind of zone look. And then they'll run some gap schemes, which is where you'll get a lot of your traps and your whams and some of your off tackle stuff where they'll actually kind of block down on a 3 technique. It looks like veer, but they're blocking down and kicking out, and it's really just a kick out play, just almost like power O to a certain degree, or the old school like 1985 kick out play, where you're down blocking and just getting a quick kick out on there. They'll run that a lot too, Jesse. So there's just a lot of different things that you do, which can create the goal being is they want to create a vertical run lane at the defense, whether they're doing it through the zone where a guy, where this guy comes down and you kick it out, or you're doing it off of a true kind of pin and pull type of scheme. They're trying to create vertical running lanes. And I think the V thing you mentioned is perfect because that's the angle that they want to hit those insertions, either with the fullback dive or with the quarterback hitting it as well. So that's another basic principle of the triple option type of offense.
I think what you were getting into, and one of the hardest things about the triple option is so many of the schemes look the same. It's like they get your eyes to be pre-trained, and there's a lot of different, same looks, and then you just slip, like you said, one guy, and it looks like veer, which is a kind of, it sounds easier to stop than what it is, but it's a very successful run play. And then when you slip, you're pairing veer, and then all of a sudden they slip a little backside, and then it takes off. And that's the whole principle of their offense too, is they're going to wear you down with a lot of different formations, a lot of different eye candy of, okay, we're doing this, and then they're going to slip one thing there, and all of a sudden they're hitting for, their 8, 9 yard, 10-yard plays, big chunk plays down the field. So that's another thing that I think personally is just really hard to stop. And especially as the defensive players, you're getting gashed by this play, and then all of a sudden they slip one, like I said, one guy backside, and now they're gashing you for even more.
Right. And if you're for a defensive tackle, especially because, you're coming off thinking, okay, I'm not getting blocked. Well, that happens a lot against the option. So you kind of come off, you've got your read, and the next thing you know, you're coming down, I'm not getting blocked again. And all of a sudden you get ear holed because you've got some guy coming down on a trap play or a wham play or something like that. Right. So it's like, so you start kind of, you kind of get your head on a swivel a little bit. You don't want to have your head on a swivel against the triple option. That's what they want you to do. They want you to be kind of thinking, looking around, what's coming and all, because then they're not going to attack you as aggressively. Jesse, I want to move next to a conversation that we don't often discuss, and that is why. A lot of people, why do you run the triple option? Why don't more teams run the triple option? And why are teams like Navy and Air Force and Army willing to do that? And I think there's a lot of reasons. To me, especially now that you don't see it much, the triple option is the great equalizer. Because number one, you don't prepare for it very much. And it is such a unique, a lot of stuff has the heart in the triple option, but it's not the triple option in this sense. And so when you're running this offense, you realize Navy's not going to have as good of players as the people they're facing. Air Force won't have as good of players as the teams they're facing. Army won't either. So what happens is I don't have to have I don't have to have Blake Fisher and Jarrett Patterson to be successful offensive line-wise, because you know what? If we're running the option effectively, we're not blocking the defensive lineman half the defensive lineman half the time. It's a lot easier to block Isaiah Foskey when you don't have to block him, right? I mean, you're defensive end. And I think that's something that's hurt Navy a little bit specifically, is because they're doing so much more designed runs and not run the option that it's putting more pressure on their linemen to block down linemen. And they're just not having the success where, if you're coming off and you could have an option play that works perfectly and you don't touch Jason Adamiola and you don't touch Isaiah Foskey, right? Well, it's a lot easier to block them with air than it is to block them with a lineman. And so what can happen is you're going to have you're going to have fewer guys to block. So if I have 10 guys that are in the play, I've got 2 receivers that are blocking. I've got two wing backs that can block. I've got a fullback that can be a blocker. I've got 5 offensive linemen that can be a blocker. The only guy not blocking is a quarterback. Well, if I'm running a triple option, I'm reading 2 of your guys. So we're not blocking 2 of your guys. So my 10 basically are blocking your 9. Well, now we've got a numbers advantage, right? There's things you can do with to gain leverage. They want to gain numbers and leverage advantages. That's the one thing an option team wants to do with how they line up. We want to out leverage you and we want to outnumber you to a side. And so what I think the triple option does is, because of the unique nature of it, because of the fact that you don't have to block everybody up front, you don't have to. And then now you're getting the second level where my 265-pound offensive tackle, who's undersized compared to your 3 technique, is now bigger than the linebacker he has to block. So now all of a sudden their linemen are actually bigger than the guys they have to block because of the way they run it. And so those are things we talk about. It's a neutralizer. It's an equalizer of my inferior talent in this area now becomes an advantage because we're going and blocking more second level, and we don't have to block everybody.
Yeah, exactly what you talk about. You can't really at the service academies, you can't really recruit at quite the level that you are, Power 5 schools. So I think a big advantage of the triple option offense is that it provides relief for these already kind of busy, these are servicemen, they're going to school, all, the regiment that comes with that. Not to say the triple option offense is easy by any means, but it's less complicated. You're basically becoming almost one-dimensional, and it becomes more of just blocking and running the ball. And to me, that's a big advantage of it when like you were saying, the neutralizer. Not only do you not have the recruits, you don't have not nearly the time, but if you can get really good at this one dimension of offense and be disciplined, which is all about, what these service academies are about, then you can run a successful offense that is going to compete and at times, upset these offenses because of what you talked about. You don't plan for the triple option. I heard that I think Notre Dame spent some time on it in their bye week practicing for the triple option. And that's what you need. You just need practice at it. You need the constant look at it, the eye training and the discipline. And that's something that Navy is constantly trying to take advantage of. And I'm trying to see here what else I had. And I think that another reason why I think they run it is, like I said, there's the easiness, but then there's the flip side of the complexity, of it, because you have to be so disciplined and you don't play it that often. It's
actually a very complex offense if you really study it.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very complex
for
offense.
A defense. For an offense, it's like it's a lot of the same stuff out of a lot of different looks. It's like 7 or 8 plays. But for the defense, you're like, oh my God, it's like now they're doing this, now they're doing that.
They break all your tendencies defensively. You think you have it figured out, and then they're just going against it. So it's like it's weird because it's easy on one side, but then complex on the other side. And I wrote that down and I was like, what's the best way to like translate that? But really, that's what it comes down to, in my opinion.
It's easy to execute, hard to defend.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. If you practice at it, if you master it. And so the other thing too, that I think works is it's a quick hitting offense if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
That's what's so sucky too, is just constantly downhill. Yeah. And I remember I was making this joke with my dad the other day. When we were playing that school that you're talking about, Mishawaka, I swear the linemen are always leaning, like they just when it's run and they're coming down on you, it seems like they have like that split second advantage, and it's on you so quick. The fullback dive is on you so quick. Like the fullback can be at the line of scrimmage almost, and you've taken 2 steps as a defense, and that's what it makes it so hard.
Well, and a running back, for example, is hitting nowadays in the shotgun run game. Notre Dame's running backs are starting at 5 yards, just like Navy's fullbacks are starting at 4.5 yards, really 4.5 to 5 yards. Feet at 5 yards is usually what you'll see them do a lot of times, or sometimes 3.5 yards if they're really, really trying to hit the midline or hit that veer quick. And so you're not only starting sooner, but unlike the inside zone or duo where the Notre Dame players will take like 2 lateral steps and then get downhill, I mean, they're downhill now. And so it forces you to make – there's no read and react. If you're doing read – this is why I've always said I hate teams that try to slow play the triple option up front. It's one thing to string out the pitch part.
Yeah.
But when you try to string out the inside part, it's not going to work because you're trying to slow flow or slow read, and they're trying to hit you quick, and they're just going to 4-yard you to death if you try to do that. And that's what we've seen happen in Notre Dame in the past, Jesse, where they just can't get off the field. They're not giving up any big plays, but they're 4-yarding to then run 9 minutes off the clock.
Right.
And those are years where we've seen Notre Dame kind of take more of a passive approach where I want to attack it knowing that they're going to hit a dive for 20 yards because we missed a gap. But we're also going to force 3 missed pitches. We're going to force 2 more bad exchanges. We're going to create him, we're going to make the quarterback get the ball out quickly and throws it behind a guy and he falls on it, but it's -7, which is the worst. It's like kryptonite you want to know it's kryptonite to a triple option team? Negative yards.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Right. You get him in 3rd and 9, you might as well have him in 3rd and 27. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And kind of, as far as kind of where they are. So it really is a stay ahead of the sticks, quick hitting offense that doesn't require you to have dudes up front. And that's the key. I mean, that's really ultimately the biggest difference between, the Alabamas and the other teams. You'll find in Notre Dame's, you'll find skill players, Cooper Kupp at Eastern Washington. You find these really athletic kids at all levels of football. You don't often find teams at the FCS level that has a line that can go against those teams. I've said this before when I coached at the Division III level. My skill players would train with guys at University of Virginia and William and Mary and teams like that. They would do 7-on-7s together, and my kids could hold their own. But if you put my offensive linemen with Virginia's offensive lineman or defensive lineman, they're going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
Because
size thing essentially
right,
at that point.
Right. I have receivers as big as Division I receivers. I have corners as big as Division I corners. I don't have offensive linemen as big and as talented as Division I guys. And that's really what it comes down to. And so that's another area where Navy can have a 6'3". There's a lot of 6'3", 265-pound offensive linemen out there that are athletic. There aren't a lot of 6'5", 325-pound guys like that.
Right.
And that's what you're allowed to do. You're able to recruit those guys a little bit more effectively. They don't have to be stars. They have to be athletic. They have to have some fight to them, and they have to be smart. And that's really the key. And I think that's an area where Air Force is still pretty good. Navy's offensive line play has just not been as good recently. And I think that's been something that's really hurt them because you still have to have some level of you've got to be able to block people. And they're just not as good as they've been in the past. Like the 2015 offensive line, the 2019 18 and 19 offensive lines in Navy, they were really good. The last couple of years, they've been pretty bad up front, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, it's about that, like the things you were talking about with the offensive line. It's overall comes down to unison. Like it almost feels like they're moving, they're like mirroring each other. That's a good offensive line in the triple option offense. And then, like you said, you have to be physical and tough and aggressive. You have to want to be aggressive, to want to, run the triple option. That's like you were saying, it doesn't feel like some of the offensive linemen want to run it. They don't want to be physical or as physical as they've been in the past. And there's just not that kind of toughness, at least. It seems like the smash mouth kind of in your face immediately. It's just kind of like, we run the triple option, but, do we at the same time? Because It just doesn't feel as intense as what it used to. And that's what makes a true triple option, in my opinion, is when you bring that intensity, aggressiveness, and toughness that you want to run it. You want to smash the other team and consistently get 3 or 4 yards every game or every possession, or sorry, every carry. Wow.
I knew what you meant. So Jesse, one thing I want to do is I do want to kind of dive. I think we've kind of touched on just the basic principles of the triple option and what it means and what it stands for. And I do want to kind of get into the specifics of what Navy does with their, I would call it a triple option offense, even though I don't think that I would call it a traditional triple option, which we'll talk about. So I do want to discuss some of the specifics of what we're seeing from them, and then we can kind of get into how to defend it. And so I do want to kind of start with that, and obviously from a base standpoint, what you're going to see from Navy this year is they're going to line up in a lot of ways that look a lot like what the triple option is, and what it here. Let me get this lined up here real quick because I'm going to get the old whiteboard out. So we're going to have some fun today. We're going to talk some ball today, people. in a lot of ways, Jesse, I think they line up very similar to kind of how they have in the past. Right? Let's see. It's not where it doesn't want to cooperate with me today. My Apple Pen doesn't. There we go. Okay. So formationally, they're doing some things that are very similar, and we're gonna kind of show some of these things here real quick and dive into some of these. So let me get these clips here. These clips right. Oh, one thing also that we didn't talk about that I do want to show here too, Jesse, is one of the things that's unique about the triple option that we didn't get into as well is normally there's a lot more spacing from an offensive line standpoint. The triple option, the air raid, or the two offenses, we're going to see the greatest line spacing between the two. And here's an example right here. You will rarely, if ever, see Notre Dame's offensive linemen get this kind of space in between them. And I will say this, Navy actually has a little bit tighter splits than I've seen from them in the past at times. This is the widest clip I could find. There's a lot of clips where I feel like they're a little too tight, and I think that's something that's hurt them a little bit. And the reason is it helps with the more spacing there is. So if you're reading dive off this guy, you want him coming from a little bit more of a distance. So if you're kind of coming right here, you want to widen the range that he has to kind of get downhill to your guy. And it just helps create lanes. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. The spacing is designed to attempt to widen you out, which then helps them create more spacing as they try to attack vertically against teams. All right. So, go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, so the main thing that looking at those splits that you had and what I kind of noticed there is, when they spread you out like that, there's obviously, like you're talking about, they're trying to create that vertical lane as quickly as possible and making a guy have to kind of step down into a bigger area. But for me, the way I think about it is, and I think a similar way Notre Dame has to consider, approaching it, is you have to have guys dedicated to both A and B gaps, like immediately between your linebackers and your defensive tackles, because that's what's got to be, plugging up that fullback dive immediately or that inside run immediately. And kind of what you were talking about, like bringing the pressure, to me, like you almost shoot those gaps with those four guys and plug them no matter what. Because if like I said, to me, that's the biggest thing you got to take away. So when I see Navy doing that, that's kind of like the first thing I see. Okay, you're gonna spread it out, but then it just allows your guys to have dedicated gaps that they can get to now or immediately.
So when you look at the Navy option, the Navy offense, obviously they are a 3-back, 2-receiver alignment. And basically what that means is they're going to have a dive back, which is the B back is what most people call it. We'll pull that base look up here real quick. So this is basically, again, they'll line up in a lot of different ways, but this is considered the base way that they line up.
Yeah, that's like their flex bone, I guess, right, is what you would say.
That's the B back. He's their fullback. You can see he's actually wide, so his feet are at 5. They'll line him up a little bit tighter. These are called SB. Super backs is what they call them. They're slot backs. And then these are their X and their Z. Okay, so we'll just call them that. So that's the basic alignment that you're going to see from them. And when you're running this option offense correctly, what you're going to see is a lot of movement from these guys. You'll see a lot of movement there, and they're usually working together. So if it's a triple option this way, right, then this guy is one of your lead blockers. Sometimes you'll get like cross action, but a lot of times you'll just get stalks here, and then he's got to get up in the alley. And we were talking about this earlier today, Jesse. I think one of the things that has limited the effectiveness of the triple option more than anything else is eliminating cut blocks on the perimeter.
Yeah.
Because it's much harder to create those perimeter run lanes with your super backs now than it used to be, when you could just have this guy kind of come up and cut the corner. So you could crack inside and then just cut the corner. And now all of a sudden you've got this big run lane. If you're able to get the pitch off, it can create some big problems. Eliminating the perimeter cuts is something that I think has limited the effectiveness of what Navy does. Air Force has figured it out. Navy hasn't really figured it out yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what you were saying, defending, like being a linebacker and seeing those guys come around the perimeter and trying to cut you, it's one of the hardest things. Is not only do you have to shed the cutter, but then you have to shed the cutter and make a play in space. And so it's a difficult situation to be in. And so, like you said, when you take away the cut, it just makes the defense's life much easier.
So when you're talking about running the triple option, basically the way that it works is you're going to have 2 reads. If you're running the midline or the veer, you're going to have you're going to pick a guy that's going to be lined up outside. Now, a midline is going to be more of you're going to run a tighter alignment, a tighter defender. The midline and the veer, sometimes in midline. So if a team is in a 4-down look, you'll see teams that'll run the veer will actually block the 3 technique, and the dive key is actually the end, and then the pitch key is someone on the second level. So, let's say this guy is here and he's lined up on the line of scrimmage. What they will do is they'll double team this and then reach block there, and then these 2 guys are lined up, and then this defensive end, or in this case the linebacker, would actually be the dive key if he was up on the line of scrimmage, and then you're going to run that wide veer. Yep. Okay, and then this guy's getting here, and you're trying to get a cut there on him, but then he might clean that up, because what we would do is we would teach is as you're working up vertically, you can't run past color. You can't run past color. Like, you can't pass up a guy that's not one of the keys, the read keys, to go to the next level guy. If a linebacker gets free, you've got to take him. Now, so what will happen is the offense will identify 1 and 2, and those are the 2 reads. So let's just say here they're running the veer. You will actually have number 1 be, depending on how they block it, this guy right here might be the number 1 guy that you're going to read the dive off of. If he crashes, so in this instance, against a tighter front, they may double block that. Now they've got 3 on 2, so they're going to you'll see situations where the triple is coming off of 2 linebackers as more teams play these off looks. So you may have him be the 1. 1 is always the dive key, and then 2 is you actually have 3. 2 is then who the quarterback reads for the pitch, right? And then 3 is kind of who they're going to block out here. So in this particular instance, you may say if this guy crashes, you pull and the quarterback's getting on the perimeter. If this guy tries to go slow, they'll be able to get up to him, and then you can hand off on the dive. And if you had a defensive end here, it'd actually even be a better look, because then you could do it this way. So let's pretend there's a defensive end here, okay? The other way to do it is you'll read 2 linemen. So if you're going to run like an inside veer as opposed to the outside veer, this now becomes your number 1, and essentially he's your dive key. And then this would become number 2. This is your pitch key. So if this guy were to work out, quarterback ducks inside. If this guy stays tight on the quarterback, he's going to pitch to that guy, and now you're trying to get outside. I mean, it's and the thing about the triple option can make it difficult, Jesse, is they can change up who is 1 and who is 2 every single time. It doesn't have to be the same guy. They just have to know who's to block, who they're blocking, who they're not blocking. You know,
they
just
have to be on the same page. As long as they're on the same page, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's another principle about the triple option that makes it hard, is they're continuously changing who their read man is. So you think you have it figured out, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, no longer the read man. I think another interesting part about what Navy does is, you're showing this formation with like their primary kind of, super backs or slot backs in the flex bone. But then oftentimes they'll go like 1 slot back, 1 fullback, 3 wide receivers, or sometimes they'll go, extra linemen and 2 slot backs, 1 fullback. It's just they take them and move so many pieces formationally, but realistically it all comes back to the same principles of, who's the dive man and who's the option man when it comes to their reads.
Well, a lot of things that they'll try to do too, and this is kind of to your point, Jesse, so I've got another clip here to pull up, is a lot of the times the different formations and stuff they're going to use to try to create, this is what we talk about, the leverage example, right? So you'll see him kind of, this guy might be a tight end. They actually do have tight ends. Or he may be an offensive lineman, to your point, Jesse. We've seen Navy in the past. They do it a little bit this year, but not as much this year as they have in the past, where they'll actually put a 6th offensive lineman on the field and put him in a tight end formation. So all they've done is they've kind of widened it. There's just an extra run lane on the perimeter, which gives them a lot of options. It gives them another blocker to kind of get up to that second level. So another thing that Navy has done this year that I actually don't think is overly effective is there's a lot of plays, Jesse, where they don't have a pitch option at the snap.
Right.
And I think that makes them a lot easier to defend. And this is an example to a degree here. This isn't really a guy that you're gonna see a pitch, but there'll be things where they'll have a receiver out here and they'll be in this alignment, so he's out there, and then they'll send this guy in motion. Well, once he goes in motion out here, he's not really that much of a pitch key. They can bring him back, but they're not. And I think it's made them, they're running a lot more true designed runs.
Yes.
And I think that's putting a lot of pressure on their offensive line. And I think that's a big reason why they're not as effective running the football is, they'll run. I mean, there was a series against East Carolina where they lined up in shotgun and were running power read. And I was like, okay, you guys are trying to be something you're not. Like, it just, stop. But they're running a lot of jet sweeps out of these looks. They're running a lot of just dives, outside dives. Air Force will do a lot of pin and pull here. So Air Force will do stuff where they'll go here and then have a guy. Actually, they'll have the guard do that, but they'll kind of down block here and then have that guy kick out. Navy doesn't do a lot of that. And so you've always got to be prepared for it because it's in their arsenal. They just haven't used it a ton this year, and you just got to make
funny.
sure.
That's the play I had kind of showed up, queued up is that like counter veer is almost what I call it.
Yeah.
I don't, it's like everyone's down blocking and everyone's moving to the left. And all of a sudden it's not even a pull. The guard's not pulling. He's just kind of waiting a half a step and then immediately kicking out that end guy and the running back is following. And that's kind of, I think, the scheme that, benefits Navy the most.
Yeah.
And again, like you were talking about, they're not running a lot of true triple option plays.
Right.
It's almost two option where, or like you said, design power plays, veer plays, counter wham plays. It doesn't feel like the option that, the pitch is really a threat. And I don't know if it's because they don't want the turnovers. Maybe they're having, issues with it in camp or something like that and never, fully installed it. But I truly agree with you that it just feels like they're more of just like this power run team more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think, again, that puts more pressure on the offensive line. It puts more pressure on your backs to make plays. And when you can't throw the football, it makes – and they're really bad at throwing the football. I mean, they never throw it a lot, but there's been quarterbacks they've had that are dangerous throwers. I mean, Keenan Reynolds, by the end of his career, was a dangerous thrower. Will Worth was a really good thrower out of the triple option. Ricky Dobbs could hurt you throwing the football. The quarterbacks they've had in recent seasons are just not – they're just not good throwing the football. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen that not be as big of a factor as well. But that's the kind of interesting thing is they do more of this than they do the look that we showed before. It is again, and this is just not the same type of triple option look. Now you can, right? So you can go here with your veer. This guy can swing back and then go here, and then you're in your that was terrible spacing. But I just drew up here by that guy. He's going to go here, you're going to read the option here, and then you're going to get downhill on a triple option, and then he can kind of go forward. There's things you could do where you can kind of go put him in motion here, get everybody thinking that way, and then come back this way. And then as far as the counter too, Jesse, is what they'll do is they'll go dive here. He'll open up. He'll come this way. And then all of a sudden he'll take the handoff and then go back this way. Yeah. They're not actually reading that. This right here is just a mechanism that serves two purposes. One is it's trying to get the linebackers run to the dive and hopefully get the safeties to freeze, which then allows them to get good angles blocking on the perimeter. Number two, it then serves as a timing mechanism to open up here and then come back on the option there. So the design is actually to get out here. And on that particular type of play, normally what you'll see, Jesse, is one of these two guys right here will be left unblocked. Normally, from what I've seen, it's this guy. So what they'll do is they'll veer through to try to seal him off. They'll block him. They'll block him. They'll block him. And then, of course, you've got guys out here to try to handle any flow. And we haven't seen them do that a ton. And I think that's something with Xavier Ardline, who's a little bit more of a dynamic runner than the other kid, that could be effective and something I think Notre Dame has to be prepared for. I think they're going to know they've got to do some type of misdirection in this game. And if a triple option team is good at misdirection, and Air Force is really good at their misdirection this year, they're incredibly hard to stop because that's the plays where you get just completely sealed inside because you all think, hey, we're hammering the dive, and then bam, you just kind of step out and then you're out the gate and everybody's sealed off. And it just takes that type of quick step mistake because of how quickly this stuff hits, and they're off to the races. And that's still a threat against Navy. You still have to be worried about that against Navy because they've had some games this year where you're like, oh, okay, now they look like old school Navy. And then the next week you're like, these guys are terrible. Like, they're very strange.
Yeah, the margin of error is very small, and that's what, teams like Navy are always trying to capitalize on. And I think that's going to be Notre Dame's biggest challenge when defending Navy is I don't think they'll have any issues, plugging up the typical kind of power run plays or fullback dives or that kind of stuff. But when Navy starts trying to get into the misdirection, I think that is potentially where Notre Dame is going to be its most vulnerable. And like you said, that's a true stroke of a good triple option offense is running the play so overly repeatedly and then hitting those misdirection or kind of counter plays. So I that's what I worry about most in Notre Dame's kind of defense, and especially when you don't play the triple option a lot, is being ready for that misdirection.
Jesse, do you have some stuff that you wanted to kind of pull up on your whiteboard?
I just had one play that I thought was the hardest, and it actually kind of plays into what we were just talking about of the misdirection, and it's what I was calling like the counter veer, and what you were kind of getting into there for a second.
So do you have something to pull up?
Yeah, I think I just tried to share.
You send it to me?
Yeah.
Okay. You see it here. All right. Oh, there it is. Bingo. All right, let's do it.
Here we go. So it was just like what you were talking about. In this case, they brought in an extra, lineman in this set, and they have their fullback or their wing out here. Fullback wing out here. They're putting their halfback behind the quarterback, and everything looks like it's going to the left because why wouldn't it? You have an extra lineman. You have this big, fullback.
Overload.
Yeah, you're overloading one side, and they've consistently shown. And what's what you can't see in this is this quarterback is actually opening up to this side. Even though the play is going this way, he's opening up here. Everyone's down blocking this way. This guard pulls back this way, and this H-back is kind of actually running more downhill than this. It's very much more vertical, and then kind of last second gets this handoff and takes it that way. But the quarterback is opening field side here, but it still gets it off to the running back here. You have a guard coming back this way. You've sealed off the edge, and this is a big play that can gas you for the 15 to 20 yards if they're executing it at the high level, in which they can. That was just the one thing that I thought I wanted to show, because I think it's the thing that makes Notre Dame the most vulnerable.
Pull that back up too, Jesse, because the thing about that particular play that you have to understand is you think, well, won't they see that the fullback's going away? Not everybody reads the fullback. You're going to have guys reading guard. You're going to have guys reading different things. Not everybody's just staring at the running back. And that's the thing too, is if Navy thinks that they have a linebackers that are reading the guards, they will do misdirection stuff all game long. And that's the thing is it comes down to mixing things up. Some people got to read dive. Some people got to read the guard. I mean, and that, to your point, is if they think that you're reading their guards, this play right here, they'll run at you and smash you. Because the second level or the third level defenders, a lot of times are going to then read the quarterback direction. So they're going to step play side, and then you can out leverage them on the backside. The other thing that you'll see teams do out of this look too is you'll see them. So are you able to make changes to this, Jesse? Draw up different things on this?
Yeah.
So what you'll see teams do also out of this look is you'll see them take their H back. We always called it the B back. It's just like with anything, you can call it different things, and they'll actually send him play side. And so you have the overload to the offense's left, and what they'll do is they'll send the fullback play side, and it'll look like they'll either do it with the veer or the midline. I usually see it off of a midline action, Jesse, where that guy's just coming really tight downhill. But because of the overload, because of the alignment, the defense will then kind of step play side. And then what they'll do is, so the quarterback will then open up in that direction, and then that wing back will then come wheeling around. And so what you'll have happen is on like a pitch action.
Oh, I see.
So he'll be the pitch guy. And so the quarterback will open up this way. And then what happens is if this is a great play to run, Jesse, if teams are using their backside to take the dive. And so you'll have that backside kind of collapse. He'll open up play side, and then the backside collapses, and then that right tackle will actually let that backside guy crash downhill, and then he'll work to do a cutoff of that backer. And then basically when that guy crashes, they'll pull that thing around and either pitch off that end if he's kind of slow flowing, or if he crashes, they're outside of him. And so that's another wrinkle that they'll do out of this look too, where that overload stuff in the misdirection stuff, if your eye discipline's not good, can really put you in a tough bind. And of course, the other thing they'll do out of this stuff too, Jesse, is just run toss. I mean,
Yeah,
just toss
straight
it.
toss.
Yeah. I mean, they'll do a
I
lot
think
of
the
that.
option 2 comes down to, like, I break it down to teams really. You'll see a lot of teams run more play side and more boundary. And to me, the teams that run more play side are the teams that have more speed, and the true option, the pitch, is more of a threat. But teams that don't have a true option threat, I see more of the plays kind of run into the boundary, because they, like you said earlier, they're going to take their 10 guys on 9 guys and know that they have discipline and aggressiveness blocking. And it's just at that point, mass, they're saying their mass is going to outmass the other mass, and you're in the boundary now and going. So yeah, I completely agree. And this is why there's so much like complexity and layers to the triple option offense.
Now the way to attack it. So let's get into that a little bit, Jesse. So that'll be kind of the next thing, is how do you attack the triple option? Well, number one, there's no one way. And if there was, then everybody would do that one thing. There's a lot of different ways, and it depends on what your personal philosophy is. It depends on what your personnel is. If you're a 3-down team, then you're probably not going to line up in a 4-4. If you're a 4-down team, then you have a little bit more flexibility to do different things. And we've seen some teams kind of change who they are for this. So, Jesse, I want to ask you, again, this is your personal philosophy. What do you think are your favorite ways, kind of big picture wise, and then just diving in a little bit into the specifics of how you're going to attack certain aspects of it? How do you like to attack the triple, or a triple option offense?
Yeah, a true triple option offense, I believe, is best run by essentially going in like a 4-4-3 look, I guess is what you would consider. And you're using 4 down linemen, 2 interior defensive linemen, 2 defensive ends. And then on the 4, you're using essentially two middle linebackers, right? 2 bigger guys who are dedicated to that fullback dive. And then your 2 outside linebackers are, committed to that pitch option with your defensive end. And I think that gives you the most coverage. So globally, big picture, I like the 4-4-3. And then again, what we were talking about earlier, I like getting those linebackers and interior defensive tackles into the A and B gaps immediately. You can do different things where you're stunting them. It doesn't have to be the same thing where this guy's got, this B and this A every time. I think there's a lot of different twists and stunts you can do up the middle to blow up kind of that fullback dive and get, what's kind of like a well-oiled machine offense kind of off of their tendencies of just trying to, cause chaos as much as possible. So twisting up the middle, getting your interior defensive linemen and linebackers to do a lot of stunts. And again, that doesn't have to necessarily mean it's only those guys. I like having the defensive tackles and defensive ends work their way on stunts, because Notre Dame has defensive tackles who I think are athletic enough to kind of cover out that perimeter. But globally, I like the 4-4-3, and I like clogging up the middle as soon as possible and taking away kind of the power and the veer as quickly as possible.
For me, I think there's a couple ways that I like to go at it. Number one, I have come to appreciate teams that do it with a 3-down look. That's still not I've seen some teams that do it, that it works.
It's hard.
It's just not my cup of tea. I just think it creates more potential mistakes. In a really well-run triple option, it can be more challenging to defend. I personally like a 4-down look. Now, I actually have seen some merit to sort of a 4-3. If you have safeties that can run and tackle, I think there's merit
to physical safeties.
Right, and rangy safeties. And so I think there's merit to that. But my favorite way, Jesse, is a lot like yours, some version of a 4-4. Now, what I like is a team like Notre Dame, who's a 4-2-5. I think you can get into a 4-4 post snap as well. So you kind of show a too high safety shell, and then you can kind of roll to it post snap depending on what they do. So I think if you have safeties that can really run, it gives you a lot more options as far as how to defend it. At the lower levels, I think at like the Division III level, at the high school level, I really like a 4-4. Just straight 4-4. For me, if I'm Notre Dame, this is one of those games where if he's healthy, this is a big Jack Kaiser game for me. We talked earlier. I'd have Jack Kaiser in one alley, and Ryan Roberts brought up like maybe having Xavier Watts as the other kind of alley guy and just attacking it that way, or having him come downhill. This could be a game where, I don't want to say this because like a Jordan Patel type of guy, the only danger with Jordan Patel specifically is He's been a bit of a undisciplined player, and you don't want anyone who's undisciplined playing against a triple option. But I could see a look where you have 4 linebackers on the field at the same time. I mean, I could really see a look where you have Marist on one overhang and Jack Kaiser outside on the other side, and then you've got J.D. Bertrand and Prince Colley inside and defending it that way because you have guys on the slot. Because here's the key. If you get too linebacker-oriented, then I'm going to run wheel routes and jet sweeps and things where I'm going to use my speed to get outside of you. Well, the thing about the way that alignment is with Marist and Jack Kaiser, you'd have 2 guys that are athletic enough. Is there a shooting at your apartment? Okay. Is if you have those 2 guys, you have linebackers that are athletic enough to run with your slot backs. And so I think that's a look that I have too. And then you have guys inside that can just crash. As far as attacking the option specifically, I like some kind of combination of your 2 interior defensive tackles and your linebackers, your call side linebackers. It's kind of my favorite way to do it. I don't love having your defensive ends crash the dive. Yeah, I like having your defensive ends hit the quarterback. Same. I want to and because my overarching philosophy is this, Jesse, and I believe this wholeheartedly. I think I want to attack the dive as quickly as possible to force a pull as quick as possible. And I want to attack the quarterback as quickly as possible to force either him to tuck inside or to pitch the ball if it is a true option. So I am going to use my 4 down and my 2 inside backers to smash the heck out of the fullback and the quarterback every time the ball is played. And then I've got to trust my outside backers, my corners, and my safety or safeties to be able to handle the pitch in the pass.
Yeah, I think the same thing predominantly. And you got into kind of specifics. And I like Colley in the middle because it simplifies the game for him, right? You're telling him just to fill that hole and smack the fullback dive. But on the flip side, I would like Colley and Marist on your edge guys because of the athleticism,
right?
And their ability to be, I think, play better in space. Then you have Bertrand and Kaiser in the middle who are plugging that up. And I agree. I don't like the defensive ends crashing down on fullback dive. I like the defensive ends putting the quarterback on his back every play and making him feel it. And that's another aspect is you want to get your licks on those are free licks. If they want to run an option play, you got free licks on the quarterback because you don't know if he's going to keep it or pitch it. So you smack him every time. And then, like you said, let your safeties and corners kind of play the perimeter, the H-back, whoever is kind of getting out there and say, good luck. Because to me, if you can shut it down eternally, I'm going to take my chances on the outside, blowing up the mesh play or blowing up that mesh point as good as you can, or blowing up in the backfield and just creating the possibility of a bad pitch or a negative play. And that's the kryptonite, like you said, a bad pitch, a negative play, and it's almost guaranteed a Navy punt at that point.
Right. Somebody put in the chat too, if you look at Navy's fumble numbers this year, you can kind of understand maybe why they're not doing as much pitch this year. But I think that hurts them. If you're an option team that can't pitch the football, you're just not going to be any good. You're just not good enough at the skill positions or the offensive line to do that. But to your point, though, you want to attack this Navy team. Get penetration, force them to do everything quickly, and get those linemen on their heels. That's going to be a big thing, and that's where I think Notre Dame can dominate. The other thing, too, about Prince Colley, too, is he's a guy that I think would be great as a backside fill. One of the most underappreciated but important roles in defending the option is your backside linebacker. Backside meaning away from the call, so it can be both inside backers. Because it's like, if you're running at me, this is my responsibility. I got B gap essentially, right? So let's say you have a 3 technique and they're running at me, and the defensive tackle's got a slant to the A gap, and then you're hitting B gap to, and you guys are playing the dive that way. So wherever if it's midline, you're probably going to the fullback's going to get taken by your 3 technique, and if they're running veer, then the fullback's going to get taken by your play side inside linebacker, right? Depending on how they're running it. But that backside guy, because the thing about the triple option, the midline and the veer, is it can bend back, and it's often most dangerous when it bends back.
Right.
So if you over pursue backside, they're taking that sucker out the gate. And if you remember when Notre Dame got burned by that back in 2010, Teach was going veer off tackle and hurting him. But there was a couple times where he just kind of cut that sucker back, and there was nobody there because that backside contain wasn't there. And that's where, Jesse, is as an inside linebacker, that's where you can sometimes get your biggest, because you're so downhill oriented that you don't protect that. Hey, it's B gap to me, A gap away. And if you lose that contain, that's where the fullback can really hurt you.
Yeah, as a linebacker, the biggest thing you have to do in that situation is play that backside shoulder, and your other linebacker is kind of playing that upfield shoulder, so you're kind of funneling it to each other at that point. So yeah, like you said, you need a linebacker who's disciplined enough to play that backside flow and keep his his front side shoulder on the running back's backside shoulder, and just keeping that containment. But then also being ready to just strike at any instance. That's the biggest, I think, the biggest attribute at a linebacker on those backside coverage or contains is you just got to shoot now and be quick about it. As soon as you see it, you attack that backside shoulder, and you just do it now downhill very quickly and violently. And I think that's what you were talking about with Kali, that he could do very well and aggressively and be quick too. Like he gets downhill very fast.
JD and Prince, when they're shot are very athletic getting downhill. And Marist is the reason I like Marist outside is because he's so rangy.
Yes, he can play the quarterback.
He's so long. Yes, he can play the quarterback, but he's also really long. He can get those kind of big paws out. It's just not a guy you really want to option off of.
Right.
And so that's why I like him outside this week. And also, there's not as much reading. It's like you either have the quarterback or the pit, and the call, you just go get it. Right.
Right.
I don't want him reading a ton. Like, am I too?
That is not one of his weaknesses.
No.
He just needs to play and play now.
Exactly. Shoot him aggressively downhill. So, and that's fine if you know where it's going to go every time, and you know it's going to go right to him. Then you can just say, "Hey, you crashed the B gap." But you don't have that. They're running to you. They're running away from you. They're bending it back. They're running a counter. Your inside backers have to be aggressive, but they also have to be smart and disciplined. And it really puts them in a bind. Whereas if the outside guy is just be aggressive, just go after him. Just go after him. I did want to address, we don't really do Q&A here, but I did want to address the super chat from Benjamin Weiss. I appreciate that. Can you explain how keying on the guard screws you in that play? The guard pulls, so he gives away the play direction, doesn't he? That's not necessarily what we're referring to. On that particular play, I wasn't necessarily referring to the guard putting you in an issue. What I was saying is if you find out teams are keying the guards, then you can really hurt them, because you can have that play where he's going to kick out, but you're actually not running back to him, right? And that's the thing about it is why I had Jesse draw up the next play, is because you're showing this action here. So both guards are stepping play side, your dive is coming play side, but you're actually taking that thing out the back. And if they're running that, then if they're reading the fullback, then you can be in a bit of trouble. So it wasn't specifically, Benjamin, to that play. It's more so finding out what the read keys are for the defense and then using that against them is just sort of an overall principle of what we're talking about there.
Yeah, and my take on that is, even if you are, keying the guard in that play, it happens so quickly, and that's the advantage of the Navy offense. It's happening quickly downhill, and it looks like the same motion. Like we're talking like 2 seconds here that they have to make these reads and steps. And when they're stepping down hard like that guard isn't even really pulling. He's just kind of waiting a half step and just veering. So it all happens, so fast. And I think that's what makes it, even if you're keying the guard, it just happens so quickly, and it's not even a true pull, in my opinion. So
it's not a pull; it's a kick. I mean, that's the thing. Is like you said, there's a difference between, like, when you run power O, you have a guy kicking out and you have a guy pulling. There's a difference. A puller is kind of working to the second level. A kick out guy is hitting right now downhill. You're looking for a first level defender, and you're trying to attack him with a proper angle to try to create that outside run lane. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to set edges. Right, one guy has to set the perimeter edge, and one guy has to set the inside edge. So you may have the tackle down blocking in an attempt to set the inside edge, either on a 3 technique if a guy comes out, or if that 3 technique slants inside, he's then working to the second level to create that inside run lane. And then the kick out is trying to create the outside run lane. And then if a linebacker and that's the other thing too, is where you can screw a guard or a tackle who's reading a guard, is that looks like a pull, Jesse. So if that linebacker overplays, he has now played into your hands, because that tackle who's going to block him is going to be able to easily kind of work him back outside. And that dive is hitting right up inside of it. Right. And so that's another where it can hurt you, even though that wasn't necessarily what I was referring to on that particular play. Go ahead, Jesse.
I think the biggest thing to take away is that this offense just provides so many trap doors, and there's like so many trap doors every play. And that's, I think, the biggest maybe message to take away is, that's what the challenging thing that this offense permits. So for, produces so much is these just so many trapdoor situations. It feels like where it's just like you think they're doing this and then it's that, and then okay, you think they're doing that and then it's this. There's just so many trapdoors to fall into.
And I love the question though, because he was listening. He was locked in, like, okay, wait a minute, hold on a second.
Watching.
Right. I love it. Absolutely love it. So Jesse, that's going to do it for our triple option section. But you know what? This is the IB Nation Sports Talk Show, Jesse, which means we've got a rapid fire coming up.
We always got to end with the good
yes,
rapid
sir.
Fire.
We do. You know the kind of hell I would catch from your dad if I didn't do a rapid fire today. It would not go well. So we are going to do a rapid fire. So I have some questions for Jesse, and I want to get your thoughts on them. I may have an opinion on some of them, but I want to get your thoughts on these, Jesse. Question numero uno, and this is the big one. Should Notre Dame continue its series against Navy, or is it time to move on?
For me, I'll keep it short and sweet. I think that Navy deserves to be on the schedule. It is a rivalry that has been around since 1927. There is a trophy involved, and to me, that is a team that you keep on a schedule. You know, it's one thing to have rivals. I could say like quote unquote rivals, maybe the teams that you've played over the last decade or 2 decades, or the teams that have provided you the most competition, you know, at a high level over the last few years. But for me, a true rivalry goes back over time. And like I said, they've been on the schedule for almost 100 years now. There is a trophy that is involved, the Rip Miller Trophy. And so, yes, I absolutely believe that Navy should be on the schedule. It's just, it is one of those tradition things. It is something I always, you know, whether Navy is good or not, I always look forward to the Navy game every year because of the tradition. And I like, you know, the consistency, the tradition of playing the Navy every year. So for me, they absolutely belong on the schedule.
And the level of respect the two programs have for each other is also something that I greatly appreciate. Absolutely. Next question, Mr. Stiers. Which rivalry means more to you, USC or Navy?
This one is an easy one for me. It's definitely USC. The USC rivalry goes back to 1926, so actually 1 year longer than the Navy rivalry. There is the Jewel Shillelagh Trophy involved in that one. And again, USC has provided, you know, more competition. USC dominated college football there for a solid amount of time. I've been to tons of high level USC Notre Dame games, the Bush Push. And I've never actually been out to USC. That's on the bucket list, actually making it out to the Rose Bowl at some point.
I have.
That would be a great time.
I've covered a game in the Coliseum, a couple games in the Coliseum. Yeah.
I'd be super, super envious, jealous. And so, yeah, to me, it's USC because of, you know, oftentimes when Notre Dame is good and USC is good, those games at the end of the season are determining a lot of things in the college football landscape. And they did for a while. And you know, the Brady Quinn era and the Matt Leinart era, there's so much more historic football when it comes to playing USC. So the USC rivalry means much more to me.
The Navy series is one I have more respect for. The USC series is the better one, the more important one, and the one that I cherish the most. So I've had some hard feelings towards USC recently because of some things that they're doing, mainly the whole leaving the Pac-12 to go join the Big Ten, which I think is a crock of you-know-what. But up until this point in time, that's been the series that's meant more, obviously. Let's go to the next one, Jesse. I'm going to jump around a little bit and try to stay within kind of the schedule. If you could add any rival to Notre Dame's annual schedule, who would it be?
So I've talked a lot about what it means to be a true rival to me. To me, rivalry are teams that Notre Dame has been playing for a very long time. There's trophies involved, and there's 6 of those teams that Notre Dame has trophies with. One is Boston College. You know, they're on the schedule. They've been playing them since 75. Navy, they're on the schedule. USC is on the schedule. Stanford's on the schedule. The 2 teams I look at are Purdue and Michigan State. And so for me, I have always loved Michigan State. I have a lot of respect for the school of Michigan State. I actually considered going to Michigan State at one point because of the engineering school that they have. They've been playing Michigan State since 1897. The big megaphone trophy is involved. So I think the obvious answer might have been maybe Michigan in this case, but Notre Dame and Michigan State have been true rivals longer, and I consider that more of a rivalry because of that reason. They've been playing them since 1897. The megaphone trophy is involved. There's no trophy involved with Michigan. And again, it sounds stupid, but I put a lot of emphasis on those trophies. If they're because to me, what that signifies is at the end of the season, say you're playing each other and you guys are like, 3-6 and 2-7, there's still a trophy on the line. That there's still this rivalry of, even though we're having a bad season, we still want to kick the crap out of our rival and win this game because it means a lot to us. So for me, I would like to have Michigan State back on the schedule.
I'm so happy that you said Michigan State and not Michigan, because that is one of the most overplayed rivalry, quote unquote rivalries. For me, it was probably the most entertaining rivalry of my childhood, because Notre Dame dominated USC when I was a kid. I mean, Lou Holtz didn't lose to USC until his second to last year. I mean, they beat USC every year, and it didn't matter where it was or how highly they were ranked. Michigan provided much better games, so they were more entertaining games, but it wasn't the same kind of rivalry like USC was. And of course, over the years, I've come to have a great disdain for the Michigan program and their fan base and just how they kind of go about their business. So I have zero desire to ever play Michigan again. Michigan is also, I also have, as I've learned the history of the programs, and Michigan is the school, their anti-Catholicism. I'm not even Catholic, so it's not like it personally offends me, but it's offensive still that they fought so hard to get Notre Dame to keep Notre Dame from joining the Big Ten because they didn't want the Catholic school in there. The school that fought to try to get Notre Dame the hardest into the Big Ten was Michigan State. And then the other part too, Jesse, is just like you said, volume. I mean, Notre Dame and Michigan State have played each other a lot more than Michigan. I mean, They've played each other 79 times, where Notre Dame and Michigan have only played each other like 44 times. So I could not care less about Michigan at this point in time as a rival. I would love to see Michigan. I've said I'd get Stanford off the schedule and put Michigan State back on. I'd love to see that.
The Michigan State is just such a good football program to me. Yeah. It's well run, well coached. I have a lot of respect for them. And I don't know about you, but one of the, Notre Dame has had some losses over the years, but the one that always stung the most was that overtime fake field goal to Michigan State. That loss for whatever reason.
Were you there?
I was there too. Oh. That one hurt like that. I watched the Bush Push live. It was up there. Like that game hurt my soul. And that's what to me is a true rivalry, right? Like both those teams were, I think, like they were ranked, but I think they were like, in the 20s to like teens range. So it was just a good, solid college football matchup. And that's what I miss in playing Michigan State. And so, man, I'm glad that we agree on that one. To your point too, Michigan fans are the worst. They're so obnoxious. Yeah. Going to Michigan, going to Ann Arbor is so hostile, not fun for no reason. And I lived up in Michigan for a while, and I think that's a big reason too. I have friends that are Michigan fans.
They are,
and so I have to deal with. I have a friend that I literally text with back and forth almost daily about. We're just constantly talking crap to each other about Michigan and Notre Dame, and that's what that friendship is.
Here's the next one, Jesse. I have this next question for you for the rapid fire. We're going to kind of go away from the schedule and talk about a couple other things. You, as a former linebacker or defensive coordinator, take however you want to look at it. What's the worst part of defending the triple option?
I think as a player being in the game, the worst part about defending the triple option is the consistent intensity and attack and downhill, and just knowing as a linebacker, you have to throw yourself into that play every single time. And their whole goal is only to get 3 yards. And so like that's a successful play to you. And most times as a linebacker, when you make a stop for only a gain of 2-3 yards, that's a success, but it's not. It's and then so you're throwing yourself in there every time you're coming downhill, you're making intensity. It's happening again and again and again. And it's just so fast and in your face and constantly. The physicality of it is definitely, I think, the worst part about it. You have to mentally be tough every play. You have to want to make the tackle every play. And I know that's what, you play defense, that's what you should want to do. But there's just layers to defense, and just constantly getting smashed like that every play is not the most fun. And these are big guys too. These are big fullbacks that you have to take down. They're powerful guys.
Now the flip side. What's your favorite part about playing the triple option other than stats?
No, that's it. That's the reason. What do you mean? That's the only good thing that I would rack up like a 20-piece playing the triple option. That's it. That's, you come out of there, the chicks think you're tough because you got bruises all over you. And then, I got 20 tackles that game. No big deal.
So it's all about the numbers,
It's
baby.
all about the
It's not
production.
just
And of
receivers and
course,
running backs,
winning.
huh? Okay.
No,
Of course.
no.
Right.
You
Right.
gotta obviously winning. That's
Right.
top priority. You want win, but then right below there is where that tackle stat line came in for the game.
I dig it. Let's talk a little Notre Dame football, Jesse. Question number 1 in our rapid fire. Can Notre Dame continue winning through USC and into a major bowl game without improving throwing the football?
Yeah, and I think the Clemson game proved that because the defensive lines and the overall run defense is only going to, theoretically get easier for Notre Dame. And so I have no problem with this very dominant run passing game. And I've said before, I think Notre Dame's best advantage on offense is their three running backs. It's a three-headed monster, and they can do so many different things with them formationally of, do we want to run downhill and power with you and straight estimate? Do we want to get more Logan Diggs, kind of that combination of power, but still has elusiveness and can get by you at a second level, past your linebackers and safeties. He's not just running you over. He's making a cut and still getting back into full speed very quickly. And then obviously, Tyree is more of the perimeter player. And so when you establish that power run game, almost like the triple option, you're training the eyes to do certain things. And then Notre Dame just hits you with a quick kind of backside, flip out to the running back, or maybe a quick flip pass to Mayer out in the flat. They don't have to get deep and complex with the passing game. Do I think the passing game on top of what they're doing in the run game would take them to an extraordinary next level? Of course, that's the kind of final chapter of their offense. When you have a great tight end, you have a dominating offensive line, you have a three-headed running back monster that can all do different things effectively. If you can add in throwing the ball in there, that's what's going to take you to the next level. But for who they're playing right now, and kind of the personnel that they have this season, I'm okay with them, not limiting the pass, but it doesn't have to be, the main premier of the offense when the run game is this dominant and this in your face the way that it was against Clemson.
I'm going to throw a few more at you, Jesse, that I didn't give you a heads up for before, because you're doing a great job, and I love how you're attacking these questions. So here's a question I have for you. If you could say any team in the top 10 right now that you would look at and say, if I'm Notre Dame, I want to play that team in a bowl game, who would it be and why?
Oh, so I got to refresh myself on the top 10. So I know that Georgia was 1, 2 was Ohio State.
I'll read it through you now.
Okay.
I'll give you the top 10 now.
Michigan, 4 TCU, 5 Tennessee, 6 through 10 is what I need the most help with.
Okay. So this is the college football playoff top 10, the one that matters. 6 is Oregon, 7 is LSU, 8 USC were taken out because you get them anyway, 9 Alabama, and then, of course, 10 is Clemson because you already have them anyway. So Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. Let's take Ohio State out too because you've already played them. Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee, Oregon, LSU, and Alabama.
For me, off of those teams, I would have to go with TCU and Oregon. And I'll tell you why. I wouldn't want to get into a physical matchup with Georgia and Michigan because I think both of those teams know how to play physical. I don't want to, as fun as it would be against LSU, I don't want to really get into that. I think there's more that you could kind of play for outside of the drama of obviously, BK and all that kind of stuff. I think it would get too overhyped. Alabama, I'm cool with playing Alabama. Like they've played them in the playoffs before. I'd like to see some new, a new face. So to me, TCU and Oregon, and I say those two because I think Notre Dame's defense can handle, what they're trying to accomplish offensively and more of like maybe a passing threat. Notre Dame's secondary is very good. I think if Notre Dame has a defense, it's their linebackers and their run game. And even, they even shut that down the last game. And I think Notre Dame would expose, that's a big word, expose TCU and Oregon defensively with their power run game. I think they'd have the most ease with what they do best, and that's running the ball downhill against an Oregon and TCU defense. And I think they stack up well in the secondary against what TCU and Oregon are trying to do offensively. So those would be my two picks.
I'm going to give you two choices. You got to pick one. Who would you rather play in a bowl game and why? LSU or Bama?
Oof. I actually, for this season, I would want to go Alabama because I think Alabama is more vulnerable, and you could say you took down an Alabama. Anytime you can, I don't care what. Okay. If Alabama is like 6-6, probably not the same, but Alabama is still a top 10 team right now. They're still very vulnerable. I think their offense is very not similar to Clemson's, but I I shouldn't necessarily say that. They're not similar to Clemson, but I think if you can take away one of their aspects offensively, they kind of become they might break down kind of like we saw with Clemson. So for me, I think Alabama is vulnerable this year, and I think it is always a good look when you can beat Alabama. So I'm going to go with Alabama.
Good answer. I think if Notre Dame was able to beat Clemson, USC, and Alabama in the same season, that would be huge for the program.
Yes.
Be huge for the program. There's no question about it. No question about it. Okay, here's a question, Jesse. I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball. This is the last one. Look into your crystal ball and make a prediction. When we get done on what's championship? Let me look this up. What is championship Saturday? What day is that? That's going to be what? December 5th, correct? Yes. No, that's Saturday, December 3rd. So when we get together on Sunday, December 4th, all the smoke is cleared. Who are the 4 college football playoff teams? You don't have to give me necessarily seeding. Just give me who you think the 4 would be.
I think the 4 will be Georgia. I think they'll win the SEC. I don't think they'll have any more problems with. I think they've cleared their biggest hurdle. I think Tennessee posed the most threat to them this season.
I also think Bama would have been the tougher matchup for them than LSU.
Yes,
I do.
Yes,
I do.
And I'm going to go Ohio State because I think that they are going to win the Big Ten and go undefeated, even though they play a very weak schedule. But that's a different topic. We can get into the weakness of the Big Ten, and it's just a kind of a crapshoot to me in most years in the Big Ten. And so I'm going to go Ohio State there. I don't know how I feel about a one-loss Clemson or North Carolina potentially, just because of their strength of schedule. And we saw, Notre Dame doing that to Clemson doesn't help the ACC one bit. And so to me, I think a second SEC school has to get in. I think Tennessee is going to sneak its way back into the 4. So I have Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State. And then that last spot is really ultimately kind of a wild card spot, a toss-up. Man, I think TCU is going to find a way. There's always a Cinderella. There's always kind of one team who everyone thinks doesn't necessarily belong. I think that TCU is going to go undefeated and hold on to that last spot, or the remaining spot. So I think we'll see 2 SEC schools, the Big Ten champion. I think it's Ohio State, could be Michigan, and then an undefeated TCU.
I am usually a really big opponent of having 2 teams from the same conference in the playoff.
But they favor it like that.
They do. I will say this, however. I do think if Tennessee goes out there and smacks Missouri and smacks South Carolina and smacks Vanderbilt and looks good, they can't just go win their next 3 games. They got to look good doing it. I think you're going to look back and say, this is a team that beat number 10 Alabama. This is a team that destroyed LSU, who we think is going to play in. Like, if you're Georgia, you are rooting for LSU to run the table. You do not want them getting upset by Arkansas. You do not want them getting upset by Texas A&M. You want them being the champs of the SEC West, because you do not want Bama. Not that Bama's great this year, but they're the more dangerous team, and Nick Saban's going to have that team ready for the SEC title game. LSU is the better matchup for you if you're Georgia. So you want them winning out. So Georgia, I think I'm with you. And honestly, I look at Tennessee, and I do think they're one of the 4 best teams. They just happen to lose to the best team, right?
Yeah,
who else would have lost to the best team at Georgia? Everyone else in college football.
Why do you think they were 8.5-point favorite?
Right.
You can't get down against Georgia when they have that kind of defense at home. It's just not a recipe for success. Tennessee got down early and then just couldn't get anything going on top of that. There was just no catching them at basically halftime.
TCU is interesting because I think their next 2 games are going to be very telling. Obviously, playing at Texas this week, TCU's played a lot of tough games. Here's my concern about TCU. It's kind of like what I felt about Kansas State when I predicted that when they lost last week. I didn't predict them to lose, but I think it's what happened, and I think it's what happened to Oklahoma State. They played like 5 really good games in a row, and they just kind of like, okay, we can't keep getting up every week, and you just kind of hit a wall. And I worry about that a little bit with TCU. They've played Oklahoma, they played Kansas, they played Oklahoma State, they played Kansas State back to back. Then they went on the road to play West Virginia. That was a competitive game for them. This past week they had a battle with Texas Tech. Are they kind of wearing out a little bit? We're going to find out the next 2 weeks. They play at Texas and at Baylor. I think if they can win those 2 games, obviously I think they're in good shape. But I think if they drop this game to Texas, especially it's a close game, they're not completely out of it yet. And it just depends on kind of who the rematch would be against. But I got to see TCU do it one more time before I truly buy in to them being that team, because I just think they've gone through a gauntlet. Look, the Big 12 is not the best conference of college football, but it is the deepest conference in college football, where literally every team in that league can give you a game on a Saturday. I mean, every single one can give you a game on a Saturday.
I've never heard that before, but I like that.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see a Pac-12 team this year. So I think it's going to be Georgia. I think it's going to be Ohio State, and I think it's going to be Tennessee. And I think if TCU drops a game the next 2 weeks, I think there's a chance we could see a Pac-12 team get in, which we haven't seen in a while. I think Oregon will have a chance, but I think the Pac-12's best chance to get in is for either USC or UCLA. So like UCLA getting a rematch against Oregon, because remember the Pac-12 went back to sort of like the Big 12. There's no divisions anymore. Right. So if UCLA wins out, they're getting a rematch against Oregon.
Yep.
And I think the best thing for them is for something like that to happen. And that would only be if you see a TCU drop a game and drop it convincingly. Because I still think if TCU loses by a field goal to Texas, depending on who they get a rematch against, you could still see them ahead of the Pac-12 teams. Because the problem is the 2 best teams in the Pac-12 have nothing out of conference that they can hang their hat on. That's the problem. Because Oregon got killed by Georgia. And then UCLA played what? They played Bowling Green. They were losing half the game. They played Bowling Green. They played Alabama State and South Alabama out of conference. I think that could end up killing the Pac-12. So they're going to need some help. They're going to need, I think, they're going to need TCU to lose and lose big. Because I think if you have a 1-loss TCU in the deep Big 12 and a 1-loss Oregon or UCLA, you're going to be in trouble if it's a close game, which then opens up an opportunity for Clemson.
Yes.
Because Clemson's strength of schedule is a lot tougher than people think. I think the ACC is better this year than it has been. I think they're going to get a chance to have a big win over North Carolina, who they're hoping is that if you're Clemson, you need 2 things to happen. You need Carolina to win out, and you need Notre Dame to win out. Yep. If Notre Dame goes on the road and smacks USC, you can be like, see, that was a preseason top 5 team that finally started playing like a preseason top 5 team, right? That's what you can say. And I think that helps Clemson's case, because at that point in time, Jesse, if Notre Dame wins out, they're at worst a top 12 team. And you can say, look, we went on the road, we played a top 12 team, and they smacked us in the mouth. But outside of that, we beat a ranked NC State team. We beat a ranked North Carolina team. We beat a ranked Syracuse team when we played. We beat a ranked Wake Forest team when we played them. Now, all of a sudden, your resume is looking a little bit better than what Oregon will have beat up, or what a 1-loss UCLA will beat up. And say what you want about about how good Michigan looks. If Michigan loses to Ohio State, they have 0 wins that they can hang their hat on.
Their best win is like Maryland.
Penn State is their best win.
I don't count Penn State, because Penn State, you could run a MAC quarterback out at Penn State that could play better than Sam Clifford. So
and we've seen that happen. So Penn State is garbage. I mean, and the fact that they like I was talking to somebody, they're like, well, UCLA canceled almost. No. Michigan canceled on UCLA and replaced them with the bum trash schedule that we've seen them play.
The 3 first games for them were like Colorado State, UConn, and
Hawaii.
Else. It's like, Hawaii. Come on.
Who might be the worst Power 5 team or FBS team not named UMass. It really might be. And you know who else is in that conversation? Colorado State. I mean,
and you got both of them.
Think about this. UConn was your best out-of-conference opponent.
At 5-5. Who almost got football shut down a few years ago.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
They're not good. They're not good. ESPN does that bottom 10 thing. Ryan McGee does that bottom 10 thing. And I'm going to look at that. See who they're they have USF, UMass, Akron, Colorado. Okay, give me a break on that one. Let me see here.
Akron, I'm pretty sure is on Ohio State.
This isn't a serious one, so I thought it was actually looking at the 10 worst teams, because they have Clemson in there, which is kind of silly. So anyway, I mean, you've got 2 of the worst teams in college football in your non-conference, and you're hanging your playoff resume on a home win over Penn State. come on, give me a break.
That's what
So
I mean.
I think what they need is Ohio. Because here's the thing. If Ohio State loses to Michigan in a close game, Ohio State can hang their hat on. We beat Penn State on the road, and we beat Notre Dame, who by that point in time could potentially be ranked in the top 13 or 14. So Ohio State and Clemson fans are both go Irish right now over the next month. I mean, they need Notre Dame to win. And Ohio State fans will tell you that. Like, we need Notre Dame to win because that's going to, because then you would have a win over Ohio State or over. I mean, if they win out, it doesn't matter. But if they lose to Michigan, they're going to need that win over Notre Dame. Because what would be the difference between Clemson and Ohio State if they both finished, 11-1? Clemson would be 12-1, and Ohio State's 11-1. Ohio State needs to be saying, hey, we played Notre Dame and beat them, and you played Notre Dame and got killed by them. You know what I mean? And look at Notre
Right.
Dame, they're ranked in the top 15 or whatever. So they're going to need that for sure.
Yeah, I think
go ahead. No,
bigger picture, I think Georgia, Tennessee, and we agree on Georgia, Tennessee, and Ohio State. And that last one really comes up to debate if TCU doesn't win out and becomes one loss, because then it's either a TCU, who presumably is a one-loss team, a Pac-12 champ who's a one-loss team, and an ACC champ that's a one-loss team. And potentially, TCU would be the Big 12 one-loss team, or
Right.
Big 12, maybe one loss and losing the Big 12 championship. So that's where it becomes, I think, complicated, is if TCU loses, it becomes the battle of the best kind of one-loss team.
Right.
And that gets sticky amongst kind of Power 5 conferences, which is why it's fun that we're expanding here soon.
The thing I like about what TCU did is their non-conference ended up not being very good. They played at Colorado, they played Tarleton State, and they played at SMU, right? But they tried. You play at a Pac-12. You play 2 non-conference road games. How many people can say they played 2 non-conference road games against an FBS team or a Power 5 team and an AAC team, which to me is still the best of the non-Power 5 conferences? So I give them at least a little bit of credit. That's a better attempt than playing Hawaii, UConn, and flipping Colorado State. Like, that's a joke.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah. Michigan's schedule is an absolute travesty, and they did it on purpose. It's not like you can say, well, UCLA canceled on us.
One game they have to win this entire season.
That's it. That's why I hope Michigan or Ohio State absolutely curb stomps Michigan.
Same.
I hope they destroy Michigan. And not
this
because
is the
I dislike
argument
Michigan.
I get in with my friend every day. I send him a picture of their schedule, and I say, you can't say anything to me. At least Notre Dame, he's like, oh, you lost to Stanford and Marshall. Yeah, but at least they powered up against somebody. Other teams. Yeah, we beat someone. We gave ourselves the opportunity
someone so far
to be battle tested. You're not battle tested.
Say what you want. I'll take both of Notre Dame's best wins over Michigan's best win right now. I'll take North 100%. Carolina on the road and Clemson at home over Penn State at home any day of the week.
I'll take BYU on the road against over that Penn State win.
Michigan's that's embarrassing. Like, to put that schedule together is embarrassing. Like Ohio State. Okay, so Notre Dame is going to end up not being as good as people thought. But when they scheduled Notre Dame was pretty good. You're trying to test yourself there.
Yeah. You're putting a data point on there that's good. Yeah. It gives you credit.
Right. So forget Michigan, man. And like Oregon, I'm going to reward, if it comes down to Michigan or Oregon, Oregon got killed, but you know what? Oregon tested themselves out of conference. They went down to Georgia and played Georgia, right? Give me that team over a one-loss Michigan team who didn't win their division and played that just absurd, cowardly non-conference schedule. And that's all you can say. That's all you can say. Right. Oregon played BYU and Georgia out of conference. I mean, now BYU ended up not being as good, but they've been good recently when they scheduled them. So forget
you telling me you scheduled UConn, you thought they were going to be good? Come on.
Yeah, the fighting Jim Moras, like, hey, man, Sonny Lubbock ain't been at Colorado State in a hot minute, right? So you didn't schedule them thinking they were going to be good. And Colt Brennan hasn't been the quarterback in Hawaii in a long time. June Jones has been gone for a while. So don't tell me you're like, oh, well, we thought they were going to be good. No, you didn't. Stop lying. It's so Michigan's a bunch of cowards. So, forget them. They don't deserve to be in the playoff. So forget it. Anyway. Great conversation, Jesse. Great job on the rapid fire. That's going to do it for our show tonight, everybody. We will be back tomorrow at 1:00. It'll be me, Ryan, and we will do our predictions for the Notre Dame game against Navy. We'll also do some of our predictions for the big games this weekend. There's some really good matchups. Not quite as good of a weekend as last week, but still a pretty good weekend of college football. So we're going to make our predictions for those as well. And Jesse, you'll be back next Tuesday, I believe.
Tuesday,
with you and your dad, right? And then we'll get you back on a post-game show in these days. The next time Notre Dame loses, and I hope it's not for a few years, you're definitely going to be
I got to
on
suffer
that
a
show.
loss, huh?
Yeah, you have to do a post-game loss show.
I got to earn my
I
stripes.
don't hope it's not for a while. That's my only thing. I just hope we don't have to do that for a while. So that'd be like you got like a 6-year-old by the next time that we have to do a Notre Dame loss show. That'd be nice. That'd be nice, right? Hey, Frank Leahy did it once, right? You know what I mean? So he had a whole class that never lost a game. So we'll have some fun with that. So anyway, for Jesse Stiers, great job today, Jesse. Very, very well done. You. I'm Brian. We will talk to you all again very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast, and follow the instructions below.